you introduce ourselves to our viewers?
Yeah, my name is Renato Reyes Jr. I am the Secretary General of the organization Bayan, based in the Philippines.
And what's your goal for coming here to Canada and talking in this event?
My goal is, I've been invited by Bayan Canada to participate in the launching of the alliance here in Ontario. And before the formal launch in January 19, I would be speaking with different Filipino and Canadian organizations about the situation in the Philippines.
Next question is to give insight to the youth here in Canada. Can you explain why martial law is inefficient? Like why it doesn't work?
Well, as in the past, martial law tends to be abused because the state and the security forces that implement martial law have a long track record of violating human rights, and they also have a long track record of corruption and other abuses. So, as it was in the past, martial law in Mindanao right now is not premised on any credible basis or justification, and is not the way to end whatever conflicts exist in the region. So it's quite interesting that despite, for example, extending martial law several times, the rehabilitation of Marawi has not commenced. There, there have been bombings despite the claim that martial law will deter such incidents. So really, why are we extending it for another year? What is it really trying to accomplish other than to strike fear in the hearts of those who are resisting anti-people policies of government?
What can we as youth in Canada do to help
Well,
this situation?
the first step would always be to know the situation going on back in the Philippines. It's quite important to sift through all the information that you can find on different platforms. Maybe uh, maybe Facebook and some news sites may not be the best sources of information, but there are very good sources of first-hand info on what's really happening. So the first step is knowing what's going on. The next step would be expressing solidarity and support for the most vulnerable sectors that need support. You have indigenous peoples, you have teachers, lawyers, you have urban poor, you have youth and students. You have so many people, human rights defenders on the front lines that really need support and solidarity from different parts of the world, including the Filipino community in Canada, as well as our Canadian friends, who wish to support the fight for human rights in the Philippines.
How can people overseas, especially Filipinos, create change?
Well, change in the Philippines, you mean? So, well, one is direct support, expressions of solidarity, even small things like writing to the Philippine government, complaining about the human rights situation, or holding them to account, supporting human rights defenders and activists on the front line who are being threatened, issuing statements, making use of social media as a means to spread the word about what's going on in the Philippines. Those things can help. Even holding your own governments accountable if they are providing aid to a dictator, and then they should be called out for that. If we are providing assistance to a police force that engages in extrajudicial killings, then they should be called out for that. If they are supporting businesses that destroy the environment and come into conflict with indigenous communities, then they should be called out on that.
What is the benefits of asking the Canadian government to look into the role of the president? How do we convince the Canadian government to support us?
They shouldn't act based on what would benefit them, but they should act based on what would benefit the people, their constituents, how principles are upheld. So when the Canadian Prime Minister says that Canada is here to defend human rights or uphold human rights anywhere in the world, then it shouldn't turn a blind eye to the extrajudicial killings happening in the Philippines and to the rise of authoritarian rule. The Prime Minister here spoke about human rights in 2017. It shouldn't be just a soundbite for the media. It has to have some follow up. The government has to follow through on what they mean when they say they are concerned about human rights and extrajudicial killings in the Philippines. I'm not saying that the Canadian government should intervene directly, but it should examine its policies in relation to the Philippines and whether or not these policies tend to support wittingly or unwittingly the Commission of Human Rights Violations. They were able to review a helicopter deal with the Philippines, which ticked off Duterte and made him to cancel the deal altogether. Just imagine if such a deal pushed through and the Canadian government becomes complicit in committing human rights violations in the Philippines. So that would be something quite shameful, to be frank.
Okay, next question is what should Duterte do instead of the drug war to help the issue of drugs in the Philippines?
Well, there's no denying, and nobody's denying that there's a drug problem in the Philippines, and it's affected um, hundreds of thousands of people. Nobody's trying to belittle the gravity of the problem. What we are opposed to is the approach to the problem and the underlying assumptions made by the Philippine government that this is a law and order problem, and it is not a social problem. You cannot hope to eliminate illegal drug use in areas that are very poor. People are jobless, hopeless, seeking an escape, or they find peddling drugs as the easiest way to make money because they don't have any employment. You can't just sweep all of that under the rug and say this is a law and order problem, and the only logical end would be to either jail people or kill people. Um, there has to be a more humane approach, and there has to be more comprehensive approach that takes into account the social and economic conditions that give rise to the proliferation of illegal drugs.
How do you feel about President Duterte joking about smoking marijuana to stay awake at meetings?
In the first place, they have claimed that it was a joke. Well, actually, the joke didn't make sense because marijuana use is not intended to keep you awake. So it was kind of an absurd joke. The question would be, why would he make such a joke about drug use? Then thousands are getting killed because of some suspected drug use.
Knowing Duterte is sick and has expressed hatred and sexual assault to women, how can he be impeached?
Well, it's the whole impeachment thing is largely dependent on the composition or the alignment in Congress. So right now we don't see Congress heading in that direction since yeah the congressmen are pretty much supportive of Duterte. It would probably be more workable or practical if the people concentrate on launching or holding mass actions as a way to hold Duterte accountable. So we really can't put it in the hands of politicians. It has to be in the hands of the people. So we'll see how a growing protest movement can hold Duterte accountable.
One of our members in Talakayang Bayan, Ira, is a communication student, so how can she create awareness by fully taking advantage of the media that she will have access to?
Well, information is a huge battleground right now in the Philippines with the rise of fake news, with the proliferation of fake news and systematic disinformation. There's a crying need to speak the truth and to let more and more people know of that. So, communication students, people in the media, have the sacred duty to ensure that the truth is not drowned out by the lies and deception being peddled by the regime. So it's a big challenge, and we have to work double time because they have put in so much resources in trying to propagate lies that just speaking the truth becomes an uphill battle at this point. But we have to do it. Otherwise, the lies will win, and we can't have that.
Drug users and people with mental health issues are both taboo topics in the Philippines. But do you think that if there is more awareness in the Philippines about mental health, will changing their mentality on this change their mentality on helping the drug users?
And it will complement other efforts. There's a law has been passed and signed regarding mental health, and government ultimately is responsible for providing adequate healthcare for those affected by mental health issues. So there's a rising awareness now. It's being discussed even in schools, even among young people, and yeah, we hope that more positive results can come about. But as we keep on saying, you have to also look at it not just as a health issue, but also as a social issue, and see what are the contributing factors that give rise to mental health problems in a third world country like the Philippines.